All right. Well, I just want to tell everyone we have a special guest with us today. We have Rosie Molinary with us, the author of Beautiful You. And this book is part of the Beautiful You journey. It's the inspiration for the Beautiful You journey. And so I'm really excited to have the opportunity at round 2 with Rosie. So Rosie, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. So I am Rosie, and I'm the author of Beautiful You, A Daily Guide to Radical Self-Acceptance, and the second edition just came out this past October. And I also have the good fortune of being a professor in the Women and Gender Studies Department at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where I teach a course on body image.
Fabulous. You sound like a very busy lady.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
What lady do you know that's not busy?
This is true. This is true. It's funny. I hear often from majority of my clients that, because they're busy, they're incapable of trying to achieve whatever goals it is that they want. And so I always tell them that it's nonsense. We have to make it a priority.
Yeah, and you just have to make sure you're busy with the right stuff.
That is so true.
You gotta have some good hard no's so that you can have some healthy yeses.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Absolutely perfect. So when was the defining moment that you recall not feeling comfortable in your own skin or not thinking that you were good enough?
So my earliest memory is around that is my second grade best friend and I walking from my house to her house and talking about our body fat. It was in the summer and how we could get rid of our body fat before school started. And when I think back to that now, what I realize is that I don't think that was something that either of us really concretely, personally believed as much as we were mimicking what we heard around us and what we saw around us. And we weren't allowed to watch a lot of TV growing up, but we did. We always had a sleepover on Friday nights and we'd watch the Dukes of Hazzard.
Uh-huh.
And I think that there was some real messaging in that, obviously we were not cognitively prepared to process and handle. But I think the real the moment where I really started to struggle with this was as I got older and realized that being a Latina in the South was really, at that time, was very distinctly different made me look distinctly different, made me have some different values than what else was going on around me. And so I felt always really aware of whether or not how other people were interpreting me, and really yearned for some consistency. Like, will I always be a Latina or always a gringa? Will I be exotic or ignored? Will I be pretty or plain? And really sort of some tension around that. And then I had this moment early in my 20s where I just thought, I'm never going to get a consistent reaction because everybody has their own understanding of what being Latina or Puerto Rican in the South means. And I'm the only person that can decide that for myself. Like, if I wait for everybody else, I'm just going to be swinging in the wind. And I don't want to wait for everybody else. And so I just had this moment where I thought, I'm in charge of how I feel about myself. And I have to be the consistent voice. And that was this real moment of realizing my power and also finally sort of holding on to the fact that I was worthy even if I was different.
So was that a feeling that overcame you, or was that a choice that you decided to make?
I was journaling. And so journaling for me was this real through line in my life. My family moved to the States when I was 2, and my dad, we didn't have a lot of money, but he took me to the library every single weekend and let me check out as many books as I wanted. And so I became really a big writer and reader. And so journaling was this thing for me. And it was how I processed everything. And so I was writing, and I was writing, I just want to, better understand who I am. And I thought, as I was reading back over it, I thought, well, don't I decide that? So it was this moment of sort of unpacking it and writing, and then reading back over it and sort of having this aha of like, well, do I really think that John and Mary and Sally and Bob are all going to decide the same thing about me and transmit it to me? Like, no. And so it's got to be me.
Okay. So with the Beautiful You book, journaling is a big component.
Yes.
Do you find resistance from people in that area of really not being able to commit to the process of the 365 days due to the journaling part?
So that's a great question. So I designed Beautiful You because what happened, I wrote a first book, Hijas Americanas, Beauty, Body Image, and Growing Up Latina, which is about Latino women's coming-of-age experiences in the U.S., and there's a lot about body image in it. And so when I was touring for Hijas, people would say, I'm not Latina, but this really resonated with me. This is how my mom, they were, my mom's Vietnamese, but she's totally like your mom. And always at those talks, people said, how can I feel better about myself? Well, at that point, I had all these different systems. A fair number of them were really rooted in sitting down and figuring out what you think.
Okay.
And I think I like to think of writing as a way to discover what you know deep down inside. There's so much stuff that sometimes maybe we're out on a run and this thought comes up and it sort of scares us and we're like, let me just pay attention to these song lyrics that are piping into my headphones because I don't want to deal with that. And so journaling, I think, is this great way to say, I can't hide from you anymore. I have to unpack you. I don't even really strongly encourage for people to necessarily go back and read what they wrote, but I do know that journaling really sort of gets at some stuff. And so, that said, I'd say probably, and it's more in the beginning, but probably 50 to 60% of Beautiful You has a journaling component to it. And yes, initially people are like, oh, this is hard because you're facing tough stuff. And the way Beautiful You is organized is that the tougher stuff is sort of at the beginning. Just because, we need to go ahead and unpack it. And people are a little bit more gung-ho when they start, too. And so I'm like, let's get this unpacked for about 2 weeks. And then you can settle into some things that are a little bit easier, like who are the people you find beautiful in the world and what do you love about them? And, some things that feel like, or just sentence stems where I start the sentence and you just finish it. And it's like, oh, well, I can add 5 more words to this.
Right.
So, yes, there are people who, if someone's having a hard time with it, it's in those first couple weeks.
Okay.
And, the thing that I like to say, I have my students do it over the course of the semester, and I just say, you won't know that it's helping you until you get past the place where it's scaring you.
Oh, I
so
love that.
get past where you're scared, and you'll look back and say, I'm so glad I unpacked that, and it's hitting me differently now. Because when I think back to that journal entry where I said, how am I sitting around waiting for everybody else to be consistent? I'm the only person who always shows up for me in the same way. I need to be the one that's consistent. I didn't get there accidentally. That wasn't my first journal entry ever. And so that was really sort of deliberately trying to unpack. I feel super aware of myself. I feel super self-conscious about this. What am I going to do? And so my advice to anybody who starts the Beautiful You journey is, if you're scared, it's working.
Okay.
Keep going to the place past where you're scared, and you can see that.
Okay. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I have been receiving a lot of emails in the last week of participants writing me, letting me know that they're very fearful of this process and they don't know what to expect. So I think that that's great advice in terms of giving them some hope and inspiration that they are capable of doing this.
The other thing I want to say about it is, I think that one reason we're scared of writing is not just unpacking what we know deep down inside, but it's also because writing was a place where we were judged growing up, right? So we turned in a paper and somebody said, this isn't sufficient. And what I would say about this is that it only has to be sufficient for you. Like, so you're not writing for anyone else, and you need to turn off like your inner teacher and judger and just say, this is what I'm able to unpack today. And there's no judgment. One of my fundamental rules is that everything is information. Nothing deserves judgment. And so if I bounce a check, that does not mean that I am the world's worst money manager. It does not mean that I don't deserve to be responsible for myself. It simply means, I need to sit down and say, well, what was going on that I bounced that check? Oh, you know what? I was writing that check while my son came in and asked me something about homework and I forgot to put it in my checkbook register, and I totally forgot that I wrote that check. Like, there are so many bits of information that clarify things that just make us aware of, okay, well, that's what I need to know moving forward, and it's no judgment. Like, and so I think it's really important that when we come up against experiences and opportunities that feel hard, that we don't judge ourselves in them. We just simply say, what's the information in that? You know, like, I'll have a moment with my son where I'm like, oh, for the love, that was some awful parenting. But instead I just say, well, why did I show up that way? Like, oh, you know what, I was hangry. Or I would, in the back of my mind, I was still really bothered by that email I read. Or, you know, whatever, you know, I got in a fight with my partner or whatever. Like,
right.
Just getting to the information and, like, deciding, all right, moving forward, how am I going to use that information? There's no need to judge yourself as you're writing. Anything you write is progress, and so that's an opportunity.
I love it. So I hear you say the word judgment a lot. Do you feel like being able to let go of the judgment allows us to be able to forgive ourselves and move forward as we approach this journey?
Yeah, you know, I think, so when I'm asked to define self-acceptance, the way that I like to talk about self-acceptance is that it's the decision to not have an adversarial relationship with yourself. It comes from a place of neutrality, and it really sort of decides that you no longer need to be punished for how you show up in the world. And so, yes, I think that fundamental to our ability to grow is our need to feel safe with ourselves.
Okay.
And we can only feel safe with ourselves if we're not constantly berating ourselves. And so self-acceptance is not about, like, oh, I'm just going to park it and I'm perfect as I am. But self-acceptance is, I accept that I am worthy and enough, that I have the humanity, I deserve the respect and humanity that any other person does. I am fundamentally right simply because I exist. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with me. That doesn't mean there aren't opportunities for me. Doesn't mean there aren't ways that I can grow, but that growth is stemmed from inspiration and not out of punishment.
Okay. Why do you feel that women are so resistant to self-acceptance?
I think because our culture really teaches us that we shouldn't accept ourselves, that we should constantly have a body project going on, and that if we accept ourselves, we're settling. And that's not at all what I think self-acceptance does. You know, I just think that the thing that I think is really important for us to realize is that so much of our pain is really rooted in the lack of awareness of our own worth. And I've mentioned this to you before, but I started in my 20s. My real passion point was working with young men in youth gangs. And I was really interested in how you work with young men who feel so angry at the world that they might lash out. And how do you neutralize that anger, and how do you use that anger, how do you transform that anger into something really powerful and good? And so I worked with young men in the Crips and the Bloods, and, you know, here we are 20 years later, and I predominantly work, I don't only work, but I predominantly work with girls and women around self-acceptance. And my college friends will say to me all the time, like, it is so weird to me that you used to walk, like, the streets of Roxbury, Massachusetts with the Crips and Bloods, and now you're, like, working with moms and daughters on body image. and they're like, isn't that weird to you? And I'm like, it's not weird at all, because it's the exact same thing. And what I've realized is, if you value yourself, you don't hurt other people. And if you value yourself, you don't hurt yourself. And so a lot of times the pain I see is the exact same pain. It's just being expressed in different ways. So, you know, maybe one group of people, like, or maybe a person decides that their pain is so tremendous that they lash out outside of themselves. Maybe another person decides that their pain is so tremendous that they lash out to themselves. And I think the reality is we just every single one of us wants to be seen and heard and understood.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is the very first person we need that from is ourselves. And if we can begin to see our own worth, then the world expands for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the essential thing we need to do is to be ever present to our own worthiness. And so when I wrote Beautiful You, it was really about not me saying to someone you're worthy, but me putting together a tool that allowed someone to gather the evidence of their worthiness and allow them to sort of a person to journey into themselves in a way that's not adversarial and can ultimately be life-changing. Because so much of what we're told outside the world is aspire to this and then you'll be enough. Like, we're told over and over again what to do in order to have worth and be our best selves. And what I want to say to people is, who do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And allow that to dictate what you do.
Okay. I love that. I feel like there's a lot of controversy around the topic of body image and self-acceptance of body image, especially when it comes to like the whole fat acceptance, that it's not healthy in terms of promoting health. What are your thoughts about this?
So the very first thing I want to say is that we're wrong if we think that we can see someone's health.
Mm-hmm.
We can't see someone's health. You know, someone's health is really dictated by all sorts of things we can't see. What's their blood sugar? What's their blood pressure? What's their cholesterol? What's their stress levels? How are they handling, anxiety, depression, those sort of things? You know, there's so much we cannot see about a person's health. In general, we can't see a person's health. And it's naive to think that I can judge someone out in the world because their body appears to be larger than mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say, I think the big fundamental rule is that someone else's body is none of my business. Like, it is just not any of my business what someone else's body looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are if you feel like you need to judge someone else by their body size, and this is a really harsh thing to realize, but it's the truth, that's really about something that's going on for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I tell my students who come in and say, oh, this person said this to me and they're devastated, is I'll say, well, if someone has something to say to you about your body or your station in life, that's not about you, that's about them and what they have going on with that issue.
Right.
And when you're in that much pain, you try to pass it off for a little bit, just so the load for one moment feels a little less like a burden to carry.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the thing I want to really press upon people is, if you're feeling that come up for you, if you're feeling like fat acceptance is not okay, those people are dying, there's something going on for you. It's really not about those people that you've labeled. And you need to trust that that person knows what their journey needs to be, or is working on what their journey needs to be, and you need to focus inwardly.
Yeah. I love that point that you just made about how when we are picking out specific parts of other people's, we're recognizing as fault and judgment, that one of my favorite other authors is Brene Brown, and she talks a lot about this concept of vulnerability and how typically when we are judging others and pointing out others' faults, it's because there is something inside us that we are not accepting of, and so we like to deflect that elsewhere by focusing on other people's issues, instead of internalizing what's really going on with us and why are we even concerned about this, XYZ. So that's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up. So how have your views changed from writing the first edition to the second edition, and how did that have an impact on writing the second edition?
So I wrote the first edition in my first year of motherhood. And so the process of writing it was really intense because I had these little windows of time. And so I would say, you can write 5 days today. And a lot of these thoughts were really fresh for me. I was just a few years into this intense body image work, and they were fresher. What And so when I was given the opportunity to do a second edition, I thought, well, there are things that I explain either completely differently now or with much more depth, like I've figured out the best way to express things. Also, I feel like in that year that I was writing Beautiful You 1, it probably wasn't my most crystal clear minded year because of just the sleep deprivation that comes with new motherhood. And so it was really neat to be able to go back and look at Beautiful You 1 and say, well, what would I still describe the same way? And what would I want to say differently? How do I, what stories do I want to tell differently? What advice do I want to give differently? And trade that out. All with what's I think cool about Beautiful You as the person reading it, it's a little bit more daunting as the person writing it, is that all these passages, it's day 1 through day 365, they're 350 words. And so figuring out, like, how do I most economically say this in 350 words? How do I teach self-acceptance in 350 words?
Right.
When sometimes I do a workshop on it over the course of a whole weekend. Like, how do I boil that down? And so that was both times a really daunting challenge, but like this awesome way of saying, all right, get down, like no excessive words. How do you figure it out? And so I feel like in Beautiful You 2, there is about 25% of it is different in some way. It might be a completely new passage, or it might be that I told a different story to go with the same exercise. And so what I did was go through 1 and say, all right, what still holds up for me and what doesn't hold up anymore? And then for that part of it where I was like, it doesn't hold up anymore in this way, deciding, all right, what's the new story or what's the tweak, and doing it. And I think what Beautiful You 2 does is that differently than 1 is that I feel like I had a greater sense of urgency for the person reading it.
Okay.
In Beautiful You 2, because I'd heard from people for 5 or 6 years about this book changed my life, but also I have my students do the book, and they would say this passage makes 0 sense to me. And so I had lots of really good feedback. And so I had this greater sense of urgency for impact and impact early. And so I think that really informed how I chose to do the update.
Okay. With that being said, that leads me into the question, what is the vision for the book on a larger scale? What is the impact that you hope it will have for others?
So my fundamental belief is that every single one of us is here on purpose, that this world is full of needs and not one of us is here by accident, that every single one of us is one part of a living solution that this world needs to heal. And because we each have a purpose that's uniquely ours, and we each have a solution or multiple solutions over the course of our lifetime that we're meant to manifest, our lives are really meant to be the realizing, creation of, and expression of those solutions. And what I found is that too often we don't get to live our purpose because we are such odds with our bodies and how we feel about ourselves. And so if we're consumed by our bodies, then we're taking valuable time away from the work we're meant to be doing and the gifts we're meant to be giving the world. I like to tell my students that if you're obsessed, you're oppressed. And the reality is, if you are obsessed, then the world is not getting what it needs from you, and you're not getting what you need from the world. There's something we're not doing for every minute that we spend obsessing, critiquing, assessing ourselves. And so my work, I feel like, in the world is helping people to move past that in order to go out and do what this broken and aching world needs of us. And so my vision for Beautiful You is that it is the type of tool that someone can take on and use to help create a really vital foundation to stand on in their self-acceptance, that it is this beginning tool that allows them to get to some healthy self-acceptance and living with passion and purpose. I just feel like the world is too precious and its needs too real, and every one of us too vital for us to be hindered by the marketing that comes at us. There's somebody that benefits from our insecurity, and they typically financially benefit from our insecurity. And what we've got to realize is we don't have time to spend lining someone else's pocket on our insecurity. There's so much else we need to do.
Agreed.
And so realizing, all right, I can enjoy fashion, I can enjoy makeup, I don't have to be defined by them. You know, one of my students will ask me that. They'll say, well, can I still like these things? And I say, you can absolutely still like those things. In fact, they're part of your ability to express yourself. How you show up in the world and what you're able to produce shouldn't change whether or not you're in your pajamas or designer gear. It shouldn't change whether or not you have makeup on or not. Like, I want you to be able to produce the same amount. Like, I don't need you to put on armor to do that. But if you enjoy doing those things because they help you express who you are and how you see yourself in the world, have at it. But don't let, oh, I can't do this today because I have pink eye and I wasn't able to put on eye makeup. Like, I don't want that to change. And so for me, my hope is that what happens with Beautiful You is that it allows all these individuals to stand in their worthiness and to realize they're enough, and that they can go out and have this ripple effect on the world's healing.
I love it. It's just absolutely beautiful. So it's day 365 for our listeners who have decided to take the challenge and participate on Beautiful You. Does it end there, or do we have to continue to do some work?
You know, I think we do work our whole lives. I think that we're always on a journey. If we're not, I'm not sure why we're here. But I hope that at the end of 365, someone feels really confident in their ability to know what the next natural step is for them, and to be able to discern that hard yes or that hard no and that healthy yes, to have some greater clarity about, like, this is the place I stand in the world. And I've got a foundation that doesn't make choosing some opportunities for change scary. It just says, like, oh, this is the cool next thing.
So what advice do you have to leave our listeners with as the launch of Beautiful You approaches next Tuesday on Valentine's Day? What advice do you have for them to give them hope that they are capable of making this journey successful?
You know, I think that the most profound thing has almost already been done. By just looking at this opportunity and saying, yes, that's for me, what you're really saying is yes to yourself. And that's really profound. And so on the days where it's hard, just do what you can with no judgment. Let it go. And if what you can do is say, this is so hard for me, I think I need to come back to this later. If that's what you write in your journal, you know what? That's growth too. And so know that you've already profoundly shown up for yourself, and that you have everything that you need inside of you. This is just an opportunity for you to gather the proof of that, because you deserve to be seen by you.
Well, Rosie, I have to tell you, I'm so appreciative of you developing this tool that so many can use to help understand better who they are and what kind of changes they need to make in terms of that mental dialogue that they have with themselves on a daily basis that keeps us stuck. I'm so grateful that I stumbled across your book, and that we've been able to put this journey together to try and motivate others to want to live their best life possible. So thank you very much for taking the time and the energy to put this book together so that we can use it. I'm really, really excited about this journey. I know that it's going to help a lot of people if they are willing to take the time and put in the energy and effort that needs to be done. So thank you so much for the opportunity for round 2.
So excited to hear about this journey along the way.
Yes, we will definitely be checking in with you periodically to let you know how things are going, and potentially maybe giving us a few words of wisdom to keep everyone in the group motivated and moving forward. So again, thank you very much. I truly appreciate it. You are the most beautiful person inside and out, and I just have so much respect for what you have done for humanity. It's beautiful. It really is.
Well, what you're doing is pretty incredible too. I'm glad that we were able to synergistically link. I love how the universe and technology are aligned in that way now.
Absolutely. One of my favorite sayings is that when you are on your path, the universe will conspire to help you. And I feel like the universe dropped this book into my lap to serve a bigger purpose and acknowledge that this is really a problem and we have to do something about it. But ultimately, it is up to the person to make the choice that they are worthy enough of putting forth the energy and effort into themselves to live a better life. So,
amen. So well said.
Amen to that, sister. Well, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. I cannot wait to get this information out to all of the listeners. I feel like you have really provided some really, really direct feedback that they will be able to use as they contemplate this journey over the next few days. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too. I appreciate you getting up early and making this happen again. So thank you very much, Rosie, and I look forward to staying in touch.